Welcome to Other People's Shoes. This season, we're exploring what it means to be unmade. Life can sometimes feel like an unmade bed. Messy, chaotic, and overwhelming. But here's the beauty. Every unmade bed has the potential to be remade. In Season 20, we're sharing powerful stories of people who faced their life's chaos head-on and found the courage to rebuild, turning their messes into masterpieces. Just like starting your day with a simple act of making your bed, these stories remind us that small steps can lead to extraordinary transformations. So put on your shoes and take the first step toward remaking your own life. You're about to be inspired, challenged, and encouraged in ways you never expected. This is Other People's Shoes, Season 20. Unmade. And now, here's your host, Neil Matthews.
Yes. Welcome in, one and all, the great and amazing Jessica Lewis. She does great work. I'll tell you what, I sometimes wish we had a child running around the house. I would have her read them bedtime stories. I feel like that would be a good voice to use. Speaking of bedtime stories, or maybe perhaps bed, I know it's an awkward moment to lead with that. Did you make your bed today? Show of hands. Anyone? I'll tell you what, my hand, unfortunately, is not up. So often I leave, actually, before the queen. That's Elizabeth, by the way. I leave before her, and so she's still most likely sleeping or trying to go back to sleep because I think I'm super quiet in the morning. She would strongly disagree with that, I think, in this moment. But I was wondering about the noise and the quietness. How you doing with that these days? Is perhaps maybe the noise too loud? Well, luckily for you, we have an amazing guest that I think could help us with some noise, with some clutter, with some chaos. Help me welcome in my new friend, Tam. Tam, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. You said podcasting for you is like an old hat. You've done it so many times. So I'm curious at the end, maybe you could tell us post-show how we did in comparison to others. Not that we're in the comparison game, because I feel like when we compare, we rob the joy of ourselves. Maybe you would echo that. Help us with this as we start and begin. If we were to find you in your favorite pair of shoes walking maybe along the sidewalks of that amazing little area of South Carolina, what shoes might we see on your tootsies or your feet?
I would have to say Adidas.
Okay. All right.
Right.
What do they look like,
Thank
these Adidas?
Oh my gosh. I love the ones with the colors. So I do the pink, and then I think it's like a pink neon and white. I love white.
They would stand out
Mm-hmm.
as you're making your way down the boulevard of South
Yes.
Carolina. You know, it's funny. We actually had a gal on not too long ago who actually talked about Adidas, and she also loves Adidas. And she actually said that I've been saying it wrong for a really long time. And it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit because all this time I thought I was saying Adidas, and she says it correctly. It's a little sort of funny to me. And I've had friends for years that have been convinced that I named my daughter Adia because it looks like Adidas. When you spell it out, it's A-D-I-A. So, Tam, what do you think of all that as I throw that in your lap?
It's really a preference. Language is a preference. There's a connotation, then there's a denotation. So whatever you want it to be, it's fine with me.
Well, I've also heard every word matters. You talk about language. And so help us with this. When you heard about us talking about this idea of being unmade, an unmade bed, maybe some mess, some clutter, some craziness, did that mess with the OCD at all? Or what did that do for you?
I think it said to me, life throws us curves. And sometimes it's the way that we catch it matters. It's not how you got down, it's how you get back up.
So can you think of a moment or maybe moments in your life where you were like, man, that moment, that event, that situation really kind of unmade me and created mess and clutter and, again, chaos?
Well, if I had to unpack it, I think it would have been April 18th, which is the day my mom passed. I don't know. I just felt like at that point in time, life just got a little hectic and a little messy because you had to go through the funeral process, and then you had to go through the process where everyone wants the inheritance. You're really not sure if this is about her or if people are grieving her loss more so than worried about what she left. It was different. It was a different space. It was very dark. So I think that probably was, I don't want to say it was the messiest part of my life, but it brings back everything at one time. No matter how much therapy you went through in your life, everything that you've went through will kind of come to the surface. It's like your subconscious connecting with your conscious, and you're trying to figure out exactly how do you put this all back together again so you can move on in life.
Well, I'm sure you've heard the nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty, right? Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again.
But it's resilience that brings us back to that space. And I have to say, all my life, I've had to be resilient. So learning how to bounce back is I think it's a process that somebody can give you on 1, 2, 3. It is an internal process that you have to take, and it's just being authentic with yourself.
You talk about resilience, though. That's a word that I hear a lot in these type of spaces and these type of environments. It seems to be a fun word people like to say, like synergy and resilience. These wonderful words that we, again, speaking of language and words that we use. I've also heard it said that either you have resilience or you don't. Where do you think your resilience came from?
Now, innately, I believe we all have resilience. Up to us to have the ability to want to bounce back. It's a desired outcome. For me, I think it would have probably been some things that happened when I was a child. I really had to be resilient because statistics said that we would fail. Statistics say that you won't make it. And then I've always felt like I was raised by Pan-Africanists. So my parents were activists. They walked in the civil rights movement and things like that. So I pull my resilience from that, knowing that to become an advocate is to commit suicide of self. And when you die of self, then you'll realize that your life was worth more than just for you. It was to change something in the universe. So Gandhi always talks about be the change. And I felt like one day I'm going to be that change. My principal, Miss Rose, she said, you're the thinker that thinks the thought that makes things happen. And that kept me in everything that I did. Anytime I would fail at something, or you never really fail at anything. Let me just say that because I don't use that word often. Nothing beats a failure but a try. So as long as you tried, you never fail. People who never try fail to meet life progression or whatever the case may be. For me, I think that it's all about trying to figure out how to be the best you can be, and then figure out what you can fix in society based on your own trauma.
You talk about trauma and you talk about growing up in harder times. What comes to mind that you remember where, hey, I had this moment where I had to find that resilience. I had to find that outside of myself to really push myself. Is there a moment that comes to mind?
I would probably say at 14 years old, something happened to me that was traumatic. I ended up having a child from it. And my mom had to hide me first and foremost from my father or from the church. It wasn't really my father, it was the church. So I lived with my grandmother, at which point in time, I really didn't even understand what was going on. I was just a kid. I think that probably kind of, I don't know if I want to say it was probably the most traumatic, because the most traumatic probably would have been at 17.
So there's this 3-year span where it sounds like life for you, those 3-year period where it was really crazy. It was very stormy. It was very chaotic.
The most important thing there is when you're considered pretty, which sometimes to me it feels like it may be a curse more so than a blessing. People think that life is going to be easy for you. Pretty much a shadow, and everything else around you is consistent on you being treated differently than the other kids because of how you look. Because of how I never really pay attention to it, it seemed like you attract every sexual deviant predator. And that's what my life has always felt like. I was a magnet for predators.
No, you're okay. What were you going to say?
The real big thing here was, for me, trying to figure out how to get from under adults who keep making wrong decisions, how to beat the news and become successful in life. With all of the things that happened, I think the biggest thing was that I had to figure out exactly what life would look like for me. So I've always had a vision board in my head, like no matter if it was rape or human trafficking, I was going to succeed. And that's all that really mattered to me for me, that's what kept me, was I'm going to show the world that I can be successful.
I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask, but you talk about because of your beauty and prettiness that you possess, that it made you more available.
It's sexual deviant behavior.
Yeah. Can you explain that comment for me?
So at 14, I believe that a family member hated me so much that they left me on the corner of 14th and Capitol in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And this boy, he raped me. And I ended up having a kid from that. And then from there, it was very dark. I don't want to say a dark time because my grandmother made it better. At the end of the day, when people have these interesting pleasures, they're not paying attention to the fact that what attracts them is vulnerable or naive young ladies or little girls. In my case, we don't get the opportunity to say no. It should happen to you. That's kind of what the world shaped at that time, is that it was accepted. I don't want to say it was acceptable, but it wasn't something that people guarded. Because for me, my daughter's beautiful, and I guarded her all 17 years until she went off to college. I knew that anybody that's a predator or would want to have something, would desire something that's beautiful. For me, that happened. I felt like I grew up in a space where all my life I've just been around predators.
First off, I want to just say I appreciate you sharing that with realistically a total stranger. That's trust, I feel like.
No, when you come to understand your truth, no one is a stranger. We've all crossed some path in our lives that we can connect. We may be different in some ways, name, race, ethnic group, gender, preferences, whatever that may be. Innately, we're all connected in some shape and form.
You talk about that time at 14 and again, that 3-year period.
Mm-hmm.
You had sent us your media kit. And one thing I found really interesting, but also super troubling, was you said there was a 2-year period where you were basically kidnapped.
So a man named Michael took me off the stairs at the age of 17 years old. I was sitting on my parents' stairs at the house, visiting my mom and dad. I remember him telling me we were just going to take a ride. And at the time, anything to get away from the fact that nobody wanted me. So I went, thinking that I would come home, but I never came back. I didn't come back for 2 years. And I ended up in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I remained there for 2 years. The first year, he kept me in a cage. I could only come out when it was time for everybody to go out. And so I just knew how to survive. If I could make it out of this, I can get back to my mom, my dad, and get back to my son. But really, I felt like, why would I want to get back to people who didn't want me no way? Maybe this is it. Maybe this is where I belong.
He kept you in a cage?
Mm-hmm. So the first year I lived in a cage in a basement. And I remember sitting there. I would write scriptures because we went to church. Since I was a kid, I've always been in church. So I would write scriptures on the ground to just remind myself that God is true, God is real, and that in time, God will get me out of this situation, right? That's what I did. And like the messy stuff that you talk about, he messed up and left the door open. I remember getting up and I was going to run and I was going to try to put on something so I could get out. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I thought he had left because I heard the door close. When I got to the top of the stairs, he came around that corner and he began to beat me in my face. And I let go of the stair rail because they're on top of the stairs. And I let go and I fell back and busted the back of my head. So they had to get me to the ER because my head was busted. And when I woke up, they were putting staples in. And a nurse named Renee, I'll never forget her. I told her what happened and I asked her to help me. And so that's how I got out. I got out through the hospital, Renee. Once I got better, and it wasn't more than just 2 days or so, she rushed me out of the hospital secretly because he was coming. And she took me to her house. She called my grandmother, and that's how I got home.
That's horrific.
It's my story. But, sometimes I try to take it and say, if that didn't happen to me, would I be the woman I am today? I'm not saying that it should have happened, but it made me as strong as I am. It made me be able to survive 30 years in business and to never rely on other people to make my bed.
There's so many questions that are just firing in my head right now. How did nobody notice you were gone?
So I grew up in the mosque in the Nation of Islam. My mom also My mother was with a Pentecostal Apostolic Church. So anything that happens in our community usually is going to stay in the house. Nobody will ever talk about it. People won't. There was no Amber Alert, first and foremost, in those days. You keep it quiet until you could figure out how to get this person back. And even after that, nobody even knew I was gone. My parents never talked about it. I felt like for my dad, if I didn't come back, because in the Nation of Islam, once you're defiled in such a manner, then you may as well be dead.
Okay, so I'm going to try to put some pieces together here. So at 14, sounding like you were raped by a person, by a gentleman. And then gentleman's being too polite there, by a scumbag.
Right, that part.
And then you're taken like 3 years later for 2 years. And because of the Nation of Islam, that religious group, Malcolm X being a big advocate of the Nation of Islam, a big spokesperson for the Nation of Islam till his assassination. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. Grandma didn't worry for you?
Let me go back on something you said. Malcolm X was not part of the Nation of Islam when he was assassinated. He had broken off from them after he did Mecca because he realized that Elijah Muhammad had lied to him for so many years. My mom probably was the only person who was worried and advocated and wanted me to come home. Other than that, I don't know where they were at. I don't know why nobody came. And I don't know if it was because at that time you didn't have the internet. You didn't have information on. There are 68,000 African-American women and children right now missing. So I can only imagine at that time, what were they thinking? Why didn't they come? That's missing today. So just imagine back in 1989, there was no need to find me. It was just another Black girl gone.
But there is a need to find you, Tam. You're worthy of being found, right?
My mother thought so.
I hope she wasn't the only one.
That was it. But I don't think that they, like I said, in our household, whatever happened in the house never went outside of it. So I don't know if she called the police to this day. I don't know if other family members knew, which I know today, after, during my mom's funeral, I've learned that they never really talked about it. They didn't seek outside help. She prayed that one day I would come home. But as far as trying to find me, they thought to people, when we go missing, we ran away. That's crazy. I never even thought about this. It is a part of what I do still today to kind of help people understand everybody didn't run away. We were just considered, they ran away. Not somebody took you. We need to go find you. That's just basically what it is. And because my sister would run away often, whatever she did, I wasn't worthy of understanding me. So my sister would run away. So to them, it was just another runaway child, I guess. I can't really answer that because nobody ever told me the reason why they never came for me.
I'm not you, of course. We're trying to be in your shoes, so I can't say I'm you in this moment. I think that would be the number one question I would have asked my mom or even my dad. Or anyone, like, why didn't you all come look for me?
My dad died at 49. I really never had an opportunity to sit down with him and ask him. So I can't say for him, but I know my mom said she prayed. She was a very quiet introvert. She didn't want people in her business. I have no idea. Sometimes it's God bless the child has got her own. That is kind of the theory. At that time in America, I really don't think that it would have mattered. I'd have just been just another child on the back of a milk carton somewhere. But I don't think it really matters.
I guess we'll disagree there. I think it does matter. It's okay. It's not my story.
At that time, I don't think it really mattered.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, my bad. I misunderstood.
Did it matter to be found? Yes. Because I wanted to come home. That's not who I am. That wasn't what I wanted with my life. If you've always felt like a throwaway, I can't make people find me a value. I couldn't do that. For me, I've always felt like a shadow and a throwaway. And I'm here.
What would you say to an individual right now, man or woman, that maybe has been in those shoes? Not exactly your shoes, not exactly the pink neon Adidas. The idea of being felt like a throwaway, felt like trash. My granny used to say garbage, garbage, garbage. When we would watch bad shows, she would say that. But maybe somebody's felt like that they're garbage. They've just been put out to the curb waiting for the trash to get picked up, that they've been on that corner, maybe not again with you. They've felt like they've been abused. They've been trash. They've been messed up. There's no hope for them.
When I find a diamond is very rough. And it's been through a whole lot. So never let your calling take you somewhere your character can't show up. You do have value. I really have not come to trying to get people to understand exactly what I feel or what I know. I do know that we all have value and you have purpose. You just got to find your way back, find your way to the child like you. And I had to do that. That's a very interesting process. I think that God is intentional. Every part of your journey has brought something else, brought you closer to your destiny. So it's not about the journey that I focus on. I focus on the present, not mainly on where I'm going. I just have to be present. Just be present, and you have to matter to you. So even though I don't feel like people came and got me, or I wasn't a priority, rather, I was a priority to myself. You have to believe in you. You have to love you enough to want the best for you. And I don't think that that's something that you could be taught. My undergrad is in psychology. I don't think Peter J. or B.F. Skinner or any of those individuals ever really focused on the psyche of women at that time. When I studied psychology, it was just to show me that you have the ability to turn on neural systems that change the direction. You have to do a mind shift. And I had to shift from it being my parents' obligation to care to my obligation to care for me. I got to take on that responsibility, and I got to move past that, knowing that you have the ability to do anything that you put your mind to. And you can transform. You can transform. You can be somebody else tomorrow. I've had to reinvent myself.
Remake yourself, maybe even like a bed, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the messiness on the shop.
Tam, if it's not too traumatic, I'd like to just go back to something you said. When you were in the cage, you wrote Bible verses. Mm-hmm. When you think of Jesus, what comes to mind for you?
My everything. If I had nothing, I'd still have something. I'd have Jesus. He's my everything. God has always been with me, no matter where I went, whatever I went through. And in the midst of it all, he will always be first and foremost in my life.
You know, there's the skeptics that are always in the room, kind of along the wall, drinking their punch. Everything's questioned. I feel like the skeptics would say, well, you know, if you love this God so much, if you love this Jesus so much, there's wonderful stories where he leaves the 99 and goes after the one. Mm-hmm. Why didn't he come after you? Why didn't he save you? Why did he wait 2 years to get you out of that situation of being in the cage and being trapped? And it's not metaphorically. I mean, it's very literal.
First and foremost, God gives us autonomy to love him, to choose him. And that part of it, I will never understand. Every disciple went through something traumatic, whether it was Job or, let's say, Peter or Samuel. So you have to know many are called, but few are chosen. But let's say this, if you never went through anything, how would you know it's a God to bring you out?
It's a great question.
So we all have our trials and our tribulations. It's how we address them. And sometimes I think mine have always, this is my thought, my pattern about it. The trials and tribulations that I have been through have manifested my greatness. I can't allow that to have any presence or weight over what I'm going to do in life or what I'm doing right now in life.
You mentioned your mom a few times, how she prayed for you during that situation. She seemed to always be this beacon, this showing you the way back home, maybe guiding you. If somehow through the space-time continuum, you shared that she had passed and that was kind of a rough situation. If somehow I gave you a weekend with her again, so we'll go, let's say, Friday night till Sunday night, what would you do with her?
We'll jump on a flight and we would go to Hawaii. So I used to live in Hawaii on the Big Island. And we would go to Kona Coffee Villas and have a cup of coffee. And we would walk the beach. And we would spend some time talking. One more time. Just one more time.
I love Kona Coffee, by the way. I've been to the Big Island.
Oh, have you? Have you had Peaberry coffee down here? Because Peaberry is a coffee that most people are unfamiliar with.
My hand is up on that. I don't know that one.
It's the lighter the bean, the stronger the caffeine. And so it's the lightest bean there is. It's called Peaberry.
I'll have to check it out. We have Good Bean out here. That's my favorite cup of coffee. It's called Good Bean.
Oh, okay.
I love it. It's my favorite here out in Oregon.
Oregon and Seattle is right next to each other. So you're right next to Starbucks, huh?
Seattle is a little ways away from us. It's probably not 12 hours. Probably about 8 hours away from where I am. So
okay.
I'm more towards California, 25 miles from the California border. So Southern Oregon is what's considered. Again, it sounds like life has just given you a mess, you found ways to smooth it out. You found ways to clean it up. You found ways to put on the rubber gloves of life and went to cleaning and went to trying to clean up the mess you could. You mentioned your kids a few times. If they were to look at your life, what is one lesson or maybe a few lessons that they learned from you?
I would definitely say from my son, he's learned not to trust certain situations. He's always, for my granddaughter, Reagan, he's very protective. For them, I think it was big on relationship. They get the opportunity to choose. And that was something big that I wanted for Rashi and Amber, is the fact that I wanted them to have the option to choose. Something that is taken away from people who have experienced sexual violence in their lifetime is that they didn't have an option. And I think that was me being real with them and letting them know my story. I always wanted them to have the option to choose.
Do you have any unforgiveness for the Nation of Islam or for those involved in taking you and not saying anything?
I think overall religion is a cult. The experience that we need to have, God isn't about religion. I think that adults and those individuals who make decisions can cause trauma to children because they're not making a decision based on what's best for children or best for the family. Because the same church that kept my mom quiet and hidden is the same church that the pastor ended up having kids with other women in the church. All of these things that people believed in, circuit that adults attended, ended up hurting the children from that time. I do see some kids that I grew up with. We are all dealing with some form of trauma. Institutions of religion take your parents away from you. They put all of these different restrictions. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't. Excuse me. It has taught me so much about understanding that God is omnipotent and all-knowing. God loves you no matter how you look, how you dress, who you talk to. The Nation of Islam, Pentecostal Apostolic churches, Catholics, all of these churches have made so many, go back Constantine time, the monarchy in which we live in, they've all made bad decisions, and it's on humans. It's not, this isn't God. This is just human.
So do you feel like there's a spot in your heart for forgiveness for those?
For me, I have to.
Okay.
I have to. In order for you to continue to grow, you got to forgive people. You got to move on. Everybody is given room for error. Some of the choices that they made, maybe they were generational curses, generational trauma. It keeps going on. No. You have to be the person to stop it. Maybe you were called to stop that. And that's what I feel.
I think there'd be a lot of ladies right now that would maybe echo what I'm going to say. The one person you don't have to forgive is that person that held you in the cage. You don't have to forgive him. He could be the one person you don't have to forgive. People would totally understand that. It's acceptable. It's okay. What would you say to that?
No, I have to. And I did. I forgive him. Something happened to him too. So I have a television show called All Men Rock. I did that so that I could understand men. So here it is people who make victims usually are victims, which is the worst kind of victim because they make other victims. Something happened. They decided not to opt out as I did. They kept going. And so they became a monster. See, monsters aren't just innately pushed out into the world and God put these monsters out here. Something happened to this child that created this monster and predicated this behavior. I can't be mad at him for the monster that did it to him. I need to understand him, not him per se, but just understand that. Doing All Men Rock helped me to heal. Got to hear stories from men all over the world that were saying to me, Tam, this happened. And what happens is for boys, they're raised to be men. A lot of times this animalistic behavior that you got to be tough, you got to be rough, you got to be this, takes away from you ever identifying with the other side of you, which is emotional. Because if you cry, then you're not a man, or you're soft, or you're gay. That was the behavior. You have to understand the era in which we were in. When you look at the movies, the Black exploitation and the movies that were out at that time was the Mac and Superfly and all of this other stuff. For a Black male, you want to become this. And you want to become this because you lived in poverty or you were taking advantage of yourself. That molded that era. So I just had to understand where this energy came from. How did this well, how did this happen? And you move on and you start to say, okay, you know what? I'll be something that can at least negate the negative and change the trajectory for the future.
That's powerful.
I think that's when you find yourself making your bed up.
That's quite the messy bed to try to make up.
But once again, many are called, but few are chosen. So we choose to be on the front line. I feel like I've always wanted to just, if I could fix this, then this might not be for the next little girl. Maybe this might not be her story, but somebody has to do it. And why not you? Why not me? You pick up your mantle and you carry it.
Maybe you've heard this story. Being in South Carolina, there's a beach nearby, I've heard.
Oh, really? I've been trying to find one, but I'm on my way to St. Thomas soon, so we'll see.
All right, well, fair enough. When you get to St. Thomas, think of this story.
I will.
It's one of my favorite stories, and it's about the starfish. And they've washed up on the shore. And there's a man and his dog, and they're walking along, and they see all these starfish, and there's hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. And the dog's digging at something because the man's not paying attention, like most men, right? We don't pay attention to stuff. And he looks down because he's like, hey, Fido, what do you got there? And he notices it's a starfish. And so then he finally looks out and he sees that there's, again, hundreds, if not thousands. And he sees this figure in the distance throwing something what appears to be back in the ocean. So curious, he goes to investigate and he sees this little boy named Aaron. He has Aaron on his shirt because his mom's proud of him. So she put his name on his shirt. And he's throwing the starfish back in the ocean one at a time. And the old man says, hey, boy, hold on a second. What's going on here? And Aaron says to him, he says, well, sir, he's very respectful. You see, the starfish have to get back in the ocean. And if they don't, they're going to die. They have to breathe the water. They're going to die if they don't get back in the ocean. And the old man looks around and looks at all the starfish up and down the beach. And he's like, listen, son, I don't know if you know this or not. You cannot save all of them. And Aaron kind of looks at one, kind of looks at the old man, throws it in the ocean. And he says, you're probably right, but I just made a difference with that one. It's the that ones, and I'm lovingly saying that. It's the that ones that I feel like you're on the mission for, Tam. It's the that ones that you're like, not on my watch. You're going back in the ocean. I'm going to try my very best to save you. It's the that one that you're like, again, like a lifeguard maybe perhaps, monitoring and watching the water and looking at it and seeing who needs to be saved. Being vigilant. That's a big word, vigilant.
Oh my God, that is so good. I like that. I'm going to have to keep that story with me.
That one was free and there's no charge for that.
Because it seems when you've been a victim to something, well, I'm a survivor, not a victim, but when you're in those situations, you end up becoming a victim of circumstances. So you will continue to keep trying to find people to help, and you'll feel responsible for that. I think it's how you do it. It's how you do it. Like you said, just one. Maybe sometimes you have to put the mask on your own face, and not on my watch will I see myself die. And I think that that's first and foremost. I can contest that people who have been through situations such as I have, we spend our whole life hoping that somebody will love us and see us.
There's a great song that I've referenced so many times. I feel like you maybe need to hear it too. J.J. Heller's song. It says, who will love me for me? Maybe go check that out when we're done. But the song premise is this idea that who's going to love in the song, who's going to love me for me? Not for what I've done or for all the things that I could be. But who's going to love me for me? I feel like that's what you're saying right now, is that those that may have felt the mess, those who have felt the disconnection, those who have felt they're too gross, they're too hideous, whatever it may be, you're saying there is still a way to clean up. There's still a way, as long as you're breathing, there's still a way to see that you really do matter. You yourself have found that.
I found it by myself. Yeah.
The problem is we try to go to Costco, we try to go to Amazon, we try to go to all these places to find it. And I think what you've discovered is you've not only found it in you, but maybe God has revealed to you that, hey, you're my daughter. You're a precious, precious gem to me. I know the hairs on your head. In fact, the thoughts about you, when I think about you, they actually outnumber the grains of sand on the seashore.
Jeremiah 28.
There's even Psalm 139 that says that he knows that. To me, that's what I feel like so many times in these moments is through my guests and even through maybe even my own words is to say, you know what? There is still time. You still matter. And somebody's like, well, I don't matter to you, Neil. And I'm like, okay, fine. That's maybe accurate. We don't know each other so well. But I will say this. You matter to someone. You matter to someone. Tam, I'll give you the last word. How can folks get connected with you? Is there a social media of choice that you love to hang out on? A website? Is there things that folks can maybe know more about you or maybe get some help from you? What would you have for us in this moment?
I would say go to iloveexposure.com, which is exposure magazine. That is more me, or Keynote magazine, either one. The one that I really feel like people will get a chance to see the whole entire me is iloveexposure.com, which is exposure magazine.
Are you a big social media aficionado? Is there a place you love to hang out?
Mm-mm.
No, that's probably smart. That's probably
No,
super
my
smart.
assistant actually runs my social media. Every now and then I sneak on, but for the most part, that system doesn't work for me. I'm 50-some years old right now. I got time for social media.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Tam, I just want to say thanks so much for the time you gave us. We really appreciate all that you shared. I just want to say that I really appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty, just to be vulnerable with us and be transparent. That is something I never, ever dismiss or throw away. So,
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is, in fact, our show today. Man, that was wow. Now, listen, you probably heard in that episode something powerful. And my hope is that you heard her say she was literally in a cage, locked in a cage. Okay, that's quite messy. That's quite, again, wow. Running out of adjectives because I don't have one that explains it other than wow. So for you, is there maybe not a literal cage, but maybe there's a metaphorical cage that you've been trapped and locked in, and it's messy and it's gross and it's yucky and it's hideous. And today's the day that maybe you find that way, that voice, that calling to open the door and get out. Let me know. You can let me know at opspodcast.com. That's a great place to let me know. That is home base. That's where all of our past, present, and future episodes will be, in case you're wondering. You can also let me know on the socials at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and X. And just remember this before we go. This is so important. It's very important that you remember this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And just remember this too. We'll be right back here next Wednesday as we walk in other people's shoes.